Back with us on the SportsMax Zone. For most professional footballers, the ultimate aim is to represent their country at a FIFA World Cup. But the ghoulish figure of the injury bug is impartial to reputation or sacrifice. And some of the biggest names in the game have already been bitten and will not suit up for their teams when the competition gets underway in Qatar on Sunday, November 20.
With just 11 days before the start of the FIFA World Cup, the injury bug continues to make its way across the respective continents. Senegal's talisman Sadio Mane is the latest to have gotten bitten. Mane is now doubtful for the tournament, having limped off with a leg injury on Tuesday. This during Bayern Munich's Bundesliga clash against Werder Bremen. Among some of the high-profile absentees from the CONCACAF region are Jesus Tecatito Corona from Mexico. Meanwhile, Wolves striker Raul Jimenez has been sidelined for over 2 months with a hip injury. Listed among the pre-tournament favorites, Argentina are also faced with injury concerns. Question marks remain over the fitness of Roma's Paulo Dybala and Villarreal's Giovanni Lo Celso. Tournament favorites Brazil have also included Richarlison in their 26-man squad. This despite the striker having suffered a calf injury against his former side Everton in October. And in a major turn of events, Barcelona defender Ronald Araujo could return from injury just in time to join up with his Uruguayan teammates. However, contention remains between Barcelona and the Uruguayan FA regarding the management of Araujo's thigh injury, which also required surgery. Over in Europe, defending champions France will be without the midfield duo of Paul Pogba and N'Golo Kante, while Raphael Varane remains doubtful. The German pair of Timo Werner and Lucas Nmecha are confirmed absentees. Joe Allen for Wales, Switzerland's ever-dependable Jan Sommer, as well as Serbia's Dusan Vlahovic are also major injury concerns. The Chelsea pair of Ben Chilwell and Reece James will miss the tournament for England, even as Belgian fans continue to sweat over the likely absence of their burly striker, Romelu Lukaku.
Yeah, so a lot from that rap that was done so expertly by John Wayne Patterson just now. We can confirm that Rafa Varane is actually in the France squad named by Didier Deschamps, the 25-man squad. He chose not to name 26 players, but I'm sure he leaves space to add one player. Don't know who that one player will be, but Varane is in. But all around, players are dropping like flies. I heard Jamie Carragher slam the timing of the World Cup, saying because the World Cup is being played now, more players are being injured. That's rubbish. Every World Cup I've known, from the first one, 1930 till now, big players have been injured and missed the tournaments. Smaller stature players have also missed the tournament. So whenever you play the World Cup, there's never a safe time to play the World Cup. Players will always be missing through injury.
Yeah, I just think that, this entire World Cup, the lead up to it, George, has had a lot of, mixed feelings. One, because it's being played in Qatar. So people are already, very open and, they're against against the World Cup taking place there. So it already starts on that sort of note. Then apart from that, the EPL having to stop 2 weeks before the World Cup. Another reason why, people just aren't very pleased with what's happening. So I think it's just that sort of highly, unsatisfying mood that a lot of people are in. So for them, it's just like, I'm not okay with this. Everything seems wrong and I would rather we go back. There are people who set in their ways and they feel like when you try to change a system, it doesn't work for them. So I get that sort of mood. But once it starts and maybe if it works, you'll hear how this is the greatest thing ever and we should do it like this all the time.
Well, a lot of times it's hard for a lot of people to accept change. The fact is that based on the venue or the country that was staging the World Cup, it could not have been played in the summer. My quick comment on that would be that COVID forced us to do a lot of things
that we would never do.
We weren't accustomed to doing. So I am not that unsettled by the World Cup being played in November and disrupting the regular leagues in Europe. It's a little discomforting for a lot of people, but for me, the World Cup is the World Cup, and for every World Cup that is played, it ranks for me above any league that is played. So I'm not as critical of the World Cup being played in November as many other people are.
But on the point of injuries, though, because Carragher's...
I don't agree with him. I agree with you,
yeah. So because the thing is this. The timing of the World Cup is as we've seen in June World Cups, and I've gone through some of the high-profile injuries that we've had over time.
Yes.
Rio Ferdinand missing one, Santiago Nazar is missing one for Spain, Ferdinand, of course, for England. You just never know. It's an occupational hazard, this thing of injury. And you never know when it can strike. And it's not as if players at this stage of the season are more prone to injuries than any other time. And one last point, on because I want to keep it on the injuries. Those, I don't want to hear anything from any analyst, any journalist, any pundit who's going to work at the Qatar World Cup who now is saying that the World Cup shouldn't be held in Qatar.
But
if you feel so strongly, boycott the World Cup. Tell your employer that you're not covering it.
Yes.
Because I want to have no part or parcel in it because of human rights, this and rights, this and leave it alone. But don't be taking the money and enjoying the trip to put on your resume that you went to a World Cup or to live the glory of covering another World Cup. And then at the same time, well, you know, it shouldn't have been here. Rubbish. It's there. If you want to prove that you really think it ought not to be there, don't go. On the injuries now, Mane's absence means Senegal's chances will depreciate severely.
I think about 20%.
I think more than that because he creates the goals, he scores the goals, and he worries opponents. Usual plans that teams would make for Senegal with him in the team, of course, they'll be bolder in their approach because they'll know that Senegal's capacity to hurt them has been severely diminished. So he'll be a massive loss, crushing for the young man. Argentina are sweating over Messi's fitness. There's France squad, and I just want to read the France squad quickly for the benefit of the viewers. So Areola from West Ham, the goalkeeper, Hugo Lloris, Steve Mandanda, the three goalkeepers. The defenders, Lucas Hernandez, his brother Theo Hernandez, Preston Kimpembe, Ibrahima Konate, the Liverpool defender, Jules Koundé from Barcelona, Benjamin Pavard from Bayern Munich, William Saliba from Arsenal, Dayo Upamecano from Bayern Munich, Rafa Varane from Manchester United. You're going to come back to that, Mariah. In the midfield, Eduardo Camavinga from Real Madrid, Youssouf Fofana from Monaco, Matteo Guendouzi from Marseille, Adrien Rabiot from Juventus, Aurelien Chouameni from Real Madrid, and Jordan Veretout from Marseille. The forwards, Benzema, Kingsley Coman, Ousmane Dembele, Olivier Giroud, Antoine Griezmann, Kylian Mbappe, Christopher Nkunku, the man from RB Leipzig with just 8 caps, he gets a World Cup call. Before Mariah looks at Varane's injury lance, this is on paper a significantly weaker France team than that which won at the 2018 World Cup in Russia.
Yeah.
No doubt. No doubt.
And he says weaker even by just reading out the names on paper, not taking into concern the theme of our segment today, the injury. Because Rafael Varane against Manchester United, of course, he came off the game in tears, George.
Against Chelsea for Manchester United, right?
Yeah.
Right.
He came off the game in tears, and it was especially because of the extent of the injury. And still, he gets into the France squad. But we aren't very sure about how serious the injury is. And, you know, they would keep that under wraps until, because they wouldn't want to wisen up the opponent as to the extent of fitness that he's at.
Thing is this, Didier Deschamps has gone back on his word about injuries because he said last week that the only way he's picking a player who's doubtful because of injury for the World Cup is if that player comes back before he names his squad, yeah, and plays to satisfy him that, okay, you are in shape to take on the task at hand. The fact of Varane's selection means that the world is not level. Different players are treated differently, especially given your importance to the team. Anthony Martial is a player he likes, but he's not been able to play consecutive games this season at a high level for Manchester United, so he doesn't get a look in. You'd have to pick Varane because you'd rather go with a half-fit Varane and take your chances with him in a 26-man, 25-man squad than not have him and he's able to do a job for you. So exceptions have been made. But with Pogba missing and with Conte missing, and I know people hate on Paul Pogba, some do, and I know people genuinely criticize him because he deserves criticism. The Paul Pogba who played for Manchester United, the Paul Pogba who plays club football is different from the Paul Pogba who plays international football. The international Pogba is easily one of the top 10 players in the world. Easily. The club Pogba, when he feels like it, he plays at the club level as if he's one of the world's elite players. But the national team Pogba delivers all the time. And you can't go to a World Cup without the ball winner extraordinaire in N'Golo Kante and still be the same force that you were the cycle before. So France's team decidedly weaker, and Yeah. It's going to be a task.
And Lance, I want your take on this because George, the point that he made, right, about different rules for different people, and I think that applies to Karim Benzema, somebody that I have a lot of time for. We haven't seen him coming down to the end of the La Liga season, and of course, again, we know he's injured. The extent of the injury not very detailed, so I think he gets in based on what he would have done in the past, but not currently.
I think with Benzema and some other players, they're being used gingerly in their club assignments now is precautionary, because if there's a knock and you don't want to worsen it or aggravate the issue, you would not play that much. So I don't think the Benzema injury is that serious. I just think he's being shielded because they want him to be at his optimum. Just quickly on the injury issue, George, that I agree with you that injuries will come in January, February, March, no matter when. The only thing is that typically the World Cup is played mid-June to July, and most international leagues, well, in Europe, end in May or early May. So if there's an injury at the back end of the season, maybe there's a little window there to recover, if it is not a long-term injury. Because a lot of these injuries can improve. Players can become playable again after 3 or 4 weeks. So the previous World Cup schedule of mid-June to July allows, I think, for a little window there for players who have ended a league season in Europe with an injury, probably about a month to get themselves ready, which isn't the case now if a player gets injury in the middle of the league.
I'm happy you said that, because it now puts this on the table to say that the players who have gone the route that you have accurately mentioned, none of those players have performed well at the World Cups. Most famously, David Beckham, 2002, with a broken metatarsal, the first time the word was introduced to this bone known as the metatarsal. We just know that it was a foot. We were told that you have 5 metatarsals on each foot. Broke the metatarsal, stepped in an oxygen tent, did everything to get ready. We saw that same David Beckham, half fit, undercooked, jump out of a tackle against Brazil for England. Jumped out of the tackle, the ball recycled to Ronaldinho, who did a step over. Ashley Cole had a step disc in his back from that move, fed Rivaldo, who scored Brazil's second goal. Brazil went on to beat England 2-1 after Michael Owen had opened the scoring for England. The point I'm making is this: a fit David Beckham would have gone full-blooded into that challenge, but because the injury wasn't fully healed and he wasn't trusting of him going into full-blooded contact in that state, he chickened out of a tackle, and it cost his team. So he's the most famous example. But the players that you've correctly mentioned, because players have benefited from that break. But people who are coming off of surgery, who are coming off of a long layoff and have played no club football towards the end of the club campaign, and said, okay, I'll take the time between the end of the club campaign and the start of the World Cup to convalesce, to mend and to go into. They've never, not a one, has played.
Sometimes it depends on the nature of the injury as well, because a bone injury or a knee injury or an ankle injury sometimes can be a lot more problematic than a muscle injury. You have a torn quad or a torn hamstring or a strained calf muscle. Some of those injuries, after a week or two, you can begin to get strong again and trust your body. But I know a lot of times with the bone injuries, they tend to be pretty scary. And with that metatarsal injury that David Beckham has, you play football with your foot. When people tackle you, they are hitting your foot. So it's understandable that Beckham would have been very cagey.
You remember the play?
Yes, I remember it well.
And team, even the mental burnout. I know we have to go to a break now, but just from playing competition after competition, they would have looked forward to that little break just to, breathe a little bit, to mentally get ready.
That's not a bad point at all. What I'll say, though, the World Cup once every 4 years, many players have gone through their careers never having played one. Players get themselves up for the World Cup. But the point is valid just the same. The point is valid just the same.
All right, break
All
time.
right, yep.